The machine is intellect, mastering the drudgery of earth on which plastic art may live, so that the margin of leisure and strength by which a man's life upon this earth can be made beautiful. Frank Lloyd Wright, a prestigious architect from Spring Green, Wisconsin, uttered these words during his seminal speech, The Art and Craft of the Machine, ultimately concluding that the machine is the liberating force behind the flourishing of human creativity. Throughout his career, Wright would continually expand on these themes, experimenting with different building techniques and materials, all with the goal of propelling architecture forward, both as a profession and an art form.
So I think what he was trying to say in the Art and Craft of the Machine lecture was the art and craft of the time. It was kind of a response to the times. And what Wright was really saying was, look, you can use the machine to help build homes. You can use the machine to stretch what you could do with regular tools of the day. So you could create new forms with the machine to enhance the materials that you were working with. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Wright was arguing for the use of the machine in building homes, but not so much that the home itself was a machine. The home was a place to live.
Wright would later test this hypothesis between 1915 and 1917 with the creation of his American System-Built Homes, a collection of houses designed deliberately to provide every individual, regardless of socioeconomic status, with a beautiful, warm, and welcoming home.
First of all, just to push that characterization a little further, the American System-Built Homes, the ones that we have that were built are all tend to be small, and I think people sort of looked at them and said, these are meant to be affordable and for families of low income. Not so much the case. So Wright was intending the American System-Built Homes to house everybody, to shelter every person regardless of income, low or high, in a beautiful home. And Wright collaborated with this other character, Arthur Richards. They intended to build tens of thousands of these things across the United States. Every city, town, and village would have Frank Lloyd Wright American System-Built Homes in it. They intended to go to Canada and down to Mexico and across the Atlantic Ocean. They were thinking they're going to build these all over the place. You might find people on the lower end of the wealth scale gravitating to the smaller home, but this is probably the smallest home you can imagine. It's 805 square feet, and it feels like you're part of nature and part of the outdoors. The way this was supposed to work is Frank Lloyd Wright had developed about 20 or 30 different base models of homes that could have all kinds of variations off of them, and then they created a series of drawings, renderings of the homes, if you will, that you could present to a client. So the first thing that would happen is the client would see some advertising. Then the advertising would direct you to a dealer, would lay out on a table in their office all of the different models that Wright had designed. You'd hopefully gravitate to one of the models and then look a little deeper. By the time you were done, though, you had made so many decisions on how the home was going to be constructed, whether the furniture was made, whether the art glass was made, and then you had different choices on the art glass, whether the garage was put in, how the kitchen was configured and laid out. You could do that on your own. Sort of like working with an erector set, and the number of options or combinations were almost endless. So it would be very difficult to get two American System-Built Homes to be identical to each other. And the client was involved in this process. So the client is there making all these decisions. They're basically making their own unique Frank Lloyd Wright house and then having their builder construct it for them somewhere. Yeah, he wanted to create the total environment for you. He thought of himself as an artist, and architecture is the mother art, if you will, and he wanted to create the entire environment for you. It's pretty much the same as if an artist were painting a painting. They want you to step into it and appreciate it. Frank Lloyd Wright was doing the same sort of thing for his clients.
Despite being a conceptual success, the Burnham block, and by extension Frank Lloyd Wright himself, experienced several financial and personal issues at this time. These challenges and Wright's response to them would go on to define him as a generational individual. and demonstrate his resilience and passion for creating beautiful, warm, welcoming, and economically attainable homes.
Well, I'd say the Burnham houses probably weren't that much of a failure. They were lived in from the get-go. But the American System Built Home project as a whole, certainly not successful. Not in, if as I said before, these guys were thinking they're going to build tens of thousands of these things across the planet. And so we only ended up with about 20 of them. But as they were ready to go to market in July of 1917, and just a few short months later, the country is committed to World War I. And even at the time, so as the houses here on the Burnham block were wrapping up and the building permits were just about to be closed, Milwaukee marches down Grand Avenue. Today we call it Wisconsin Avenue. And I think the headline in the newspaper read 28,000 people marched down the center of the city with 150,000 on the sidewalks. And these people are prepared to go to war. And then more important, Kevin Abbing, who's an archivist at the Milwaukee County Historical Society, wrote a really good book on this era. And he's talking about the psyche of the nation. It's not time to buy a house and put down roots. This isn't really a great time to launch a brand new American System Built Homes project. And that basically kind of dried up at that point. So Mama was his lover. She was murdered in a fire at Taliesin in August of 1914. I think that murder had an impact on Wright the rest of his life. But I think of Mama more as and all of the women that were around Wright up until that point, and really Wright surrounded himself with brilliant women. There was Marion Mahoney, who was a fabulous illustrator, just an extraordinary talent all on her own, and you can only imagine Mama had this major influence in laying out how these houses, how you lived in the house. It wasn't just Wright dreaming of this stuff. It was the interchange that Wright had with all these brilliant women in his life. I like to tell the kids that come through here, the students from fourth grade to, well, even all the way to lifelong learners, that one of the most unique things about Wright was his ability to think different. He created something brand new, but I think if you sort of tried to distill what Wright was trying to do, you'd come up with three things. He wanted you to be connected to nature. He wanted you to be able to come home to a place of quiet and serenity and beauty. And he wanted, the third thing would be, he wanted to create spaces where a family could come together. Or if he could achieve those three things, I think he changed architecture in the United States, and for that matter in the world. We understand what Wright was doing in 1916, and yet it's still relevant today. I mean, these homes are 105 years old, and people still come here and study and try and figure out, how did he do that? How did he make this tiny little space feel so big? Why do I get this feeling that I could live here even though this is probably smaller than my garage? 60% of the people that come here say I could live here. It's just an amazing thing, but it's a feeling, and it's something that people want to come and experience. And I sometimes get to address our volunteers, and I'll remind them, hey, this Burnham block place is pretty cool. People come here from all over the world to see it, all over the United States to see it. But at the end of the day, this can't be just a dusty old pile of bricks. We really have to be thinking about how to keep this place alive and keep people coming here to experience it and Wright's architecture.